Hi everyone, it's Keren here and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a new video tutorial where I created 3 different objects with the same substrate to compare the 3 new Rust Effect pastes from Prima Finnabair line. They came out with 3 new sets, a military set, a camouflage set, and a metal rust set. And these complement the original rust paste and patina paste as well. So you could use them all together or separately depending on your project. The first thing I did is I took some fabric from Finnabair. This is just some burlap, and all I'm doing is I'm fitting it to my MDF substrate. This is a shaped hand MDF substrate, and all I'm doing is just fraying the burlap so it can fit on the background because I really wanted to create some texture in the background. I have 3 of these hand-like shapes. Traditionally, they're called hamsas, and they're used for decoration, and I have a collection of them in my house, so these will fit perfectly with my collection. I wanted to have 3 equal projects because I wanted to compare the 3 sets of rust pastes. The sets come with 3 colors each, and all 3 colors go perfectly well together. Each MDF substrate will work with one of the sets, and I will really show how to combine the pastes together to create beautiful rust effects. Once I frayed the burlap and cut it to the right size, I went ahead and took some soft matte gel from Prima and glued the burlap to the background. I used my silicone brush to just apply it to the MDF and then just glued the burlap on top. The burlap really creates a beautiful texture when you add any type of paste or color on it. Then I went ahead and did it with the other 2 substrates. I didn't have to let the glue dry because I was going to add embellishments with glue as well. So I gathered a few metal embellishments from Prima Finnabair, lots of mechanicals that I had in my stash that I wanted to include in each of the backgrounds. And I placed them on the substrate and arranged them the way I wanted. Then I took a picture of it, and all I'm doing now is just copying the picture that I had taken with all the different elements. I didn't want to spend time during this video to show you how I'm arranging the composition. All I did is just arrange the composition beforehand, and one of the tricks that I always use is I take a picture of the actual arrangement, whether it's a layout or a canvas or any type of project, and I'm able to just refer to it whenever I need to and place the embellishments in the same exact place. This is a great tip if you're doing something and you want to remember how to put them back together, because you might have to remove them to add another element. Or if you're gluing it and you're moving some of the elements around, you want to make sure you know how to get back to it. So it's a great tip to take a picture of it and use it through your phone. I created 2 hands that are the same. Those are the ones on the left and on the right. And the middle one, I actually used different mechanicals because I just wanted them to be a little bit different, the middle one to be different than the ones on the side. The large flower that I used on both the left and right hands are actually brand new mechanicals for 2018. Everything else has been released before, and I just gathered a lot of the mechanicals that I love and just added them and glued them to the background. I'm listing all the products below in the description area. I will try to list as many of them as I can find. Some of these mechanicals are old and have been in my stash for a while. However, you can use any type of metal embellishments to create this type of metallic collage. And you can use any type of substrate. It doesn't have to be MDF. It could be a canvas, and it could be in any type of shape. So you can create anything your imagination desires. I used heavy gel to glue all the elements to the background. Heavy gel helps them stay in place because most of these elements are pretty heavy because they're made out of metal. So it's a good idea to use heavy gel so they stay put and are able to withstand the heaviness. I will not show you how I glue each one of these elements. But all I do is I take some heavy gel, and using a little palette knife, I just add some gel to each of the elements and then glue them to the background. This is a good way to keep them in place. I also like keeping a small little brush handy so I can clean up any excess that accumulates around the embellishment. So all I do is I rub it around the glue to make sure and remove the glue that went underneath and is sticking out from underneath the embellishment. Then you can heat set them, and the more you heat set, the drier the gel becomes. However, it does take about 24 hours for the gel to fully set. Finally, here are the three sets that I'll be using. On the left hand side is the military set, in the center is the camouflage set, and on the right is the metal rust set. And that's the first one that I will be using. And I'm going to work on each of the projects individually because I really want to show you how to combine these. These sets can be combined with each other or worked individually within the set. In this video, I'm going to be working specifically with each set separately on a separate substrate. I really want to show how well the pastes interact with each other. So I really want to make sure that I stay within the set because you might just want to purchase one of the sets and not all of them. So that's why I'm doing that. The three colors for this set is dark brown, green, and rusty, which is the rusty color that you see at the top of the screen. And what I'm doing is I'm actually starting with the dark brown first, and I'm applying it to the whole substrate, to everything, all the embellishments and also the background. The nice thing about the rust paste, and I've said this with the other ones that already came out, is that you really don't need to prime the background. You don't need to add any gesso if you don't want to because they're so thick that they actually give an amazing coverage to the background. You can, if you want, add gesso, but it's not necessary. So all I'm doing is just adding the dark brown first, and then I'm going to add the other elements as highlights. I'm going to mix the green with the brown, and the rusty color will only be to add some highlights at the end. The green really gives it a nice touch, and I really like the combination of the brown and the green because it really makes it look like camouflage. Even though this is not the one that is called camouflage, it really gives it that amazing rusty look. And adding that rusty color at the end, you'll see it really makes a difference when you mix all three of them together. The sets were made to combine perfectly together, and that's what I like about how Finnabair thinks. She actually puts products together that will look really good and will help create the project that you want. This is perfect to get that grungy look, that steampunk look, and these colors are just perfect for that. And the texture that the rust paste gives is really, really great. So it gives it that metallic look, it gives it that rusty look, and it also gives it that beautiful color that I really love. So here I am adding the rusty color, and I'm just adding it as highlights to some of the embellishments so they can stand out. And that helps bring the whole thing together. So by adding these beautiful highlights onto some of the embellishments, it really makes them pop up and helps blend everything together, the green, the brown, and also that rusty color. Using a dry brush technique or just applying it lightly on certain areas really helps for this type of project. In order to add some more layers, it's important to heat set in between. So if you don't want the colors to interact with each other, the best way to do is to heat set them and then add more color afterwards. That way you will not get a mushy color, you will get the colors to be distinct from each other. The second hand, I am going to be coloring with the military set. And the word says it all. It actually looks like a military uniform. When these three colors combine, they really create a beautiful color that looks just like a military uniform from the army. So the colors are from dark to light. The dark color is gray, but it actually has a green tinge to it as well. So it really looks greenish gray. The middle color, which is also green, it's a light green, but it's actually called green gray. And the last one, which is the yellow, is called yellow rust. And for this technique, I'm doing the same thing I did before, is I'm adding the dark color first. You don't have to do that. You could actually add the light colors first and have a completely different technique. And for that third substrate, I'm actually going to reverse the technique and do the light colors first. I actually wished I would have done this for the military set as well. I think it would have looked really nice. I would have added that light green gray color first and combine it with the yellow and then just add shadows with the dark gray. But I went ahead and did the dark gray first and covered the whole hand, the whole substrate with the dark color, the same way I had done with the first one. Then I took the light green gray color and started adding highlights on all the embellishments. You have to again use some kind of dry brush technique because you really want to get as little as possible so it only highlights those really nice embellishments. You don't want to add too much paste because it's so thick that it will actually cover and the design of the embellishment will not show. So it's really important to just add a little bit just so it highlights each embellishment separately. Now you can use these when the paste is wet, but you can also heat set each layer individually. And sometimes I like doing that because then the color is that much stronger because it's not blending with the color underneath. So I heat set the light green and then I went ahead and added it again. And this time, because the background was dry, it really helped to show those details on all the embellishments. Then I started adding the yellow rust and I made sure that the green was still a little bit wet so that way it would mix with the yellow and combine and create a really nice rusty effect. I really love the yellow rust. It really gave beautiful highlights to the background and I really liked using it to create those highlights. For the last substrate, I used the Camouflage set. And as I said before, I went ahead and I used the lighter colors first. The colors are dark olive, which is a beautiful green. There is the brown, which is actually a light brown. And then there's the color dusty, which looks like a creamy kind of color. These three together were beautiful, and I really like the effect that it created. So as I said, I am going to add the light colors first. So I started by adding the brown to the background. This is quite a light brown color, so it looked really nice and it didn't overpower the background. Then I went in with that dusty color, which is a creamy color, and just blended it with the brown color. I really liked how the dusty color gave beautiful highlights to all the embellishment, especially that center heart locket. And I really liked how adding it to the wings really brought those wings to the surface. I really like how this one turned out. I like that I started with the light colors, which is usually not how I do it. I usually start with the darker colors and then add highlights. In this case, I went backwards. I started with the highlights and then I added the shadows. And this is a great way to know that you could use both techniques and you get not only different results, but also some similar results. So you could use these pastes in many different ways to just create either highlights, shadows, and have it look as if it's rusty and old and grungy, and each one has its own effects, and when combined together, they look awesome. Before adding the dark olive, I heat set these two colors because I really wanted them to stand on their own. I didn't want the olive green to actually mix in with these colors. Then I started adding the olive green. And the way I work with this one is that I added it only as shadows underneath the embellishments. So I started underneath all the embellishment and dragged my paintbrush down. But I never touched the top of the embellishments, only underneath them, because I wanted them to look like the shadow and not the highlights. So I started on each embellishment and kind of surrounded it to really create that beautiful shadow behind it. I even took a thin paintbrush and used it to color in between the embellishment inside the circles so I could actually make it look as if it was the background, that the shadow was behind it. So I needed to color in inside the embellishment to make sure that it looks as if it was already part of it from before. Once I was done, I heat set all 3 projects, and then I went ahead and wanted to add some highlights, golden highlights. So I took my vintage gold wax from Prima Finnabair, and I went ahead and using my stipple brush added it to some of the embellishments to create those beautiful golden highlights. All you have to do is just dip your brush into the wax and then go ahead and lightly touch the surface of each of the embellishments. This creates a beautiful highlight on all the surfaces that it touches. This wax is one of my favorite products that came out last year. It really gives an amazing final touch to a project, and here was no exception. I really love putting those final touches to any rusty effect look, and adding that golden wax or the copper wax really makes a difference. My favorite color, I've always said, is vintage gold, which is the one I'm using here. But when I tried adding it to the other substrates, it wasn't showing as much. So I went ahead and got some other colors that would blend better with these 2 other rust pastes. I brought the aged brass and the rich copper and added a little bit of more reddish tones to the other 2. That really helped and kind of bring everything together, and it was showing much more than the vintage gold. So I find that sometimes when you have too light of a color, it might blend too much with the vintage gold color, so you need something a little bit darker. I also like sometimes using my finger to apply the wax because you can control the spaces and the places that you want to put them in. Finally, I took some MDF titles that I wanted to add to each of the projects. And all I did is use my stipple brush to just color them with the vintage gold color. So I just went ahead and highlighted them with the color and then glued them to the background. I like adding words to my projects because it gives them meaning. And that's really important, to have meaning when you're creating art. Just as a tip, when you're using the wax on your mat, just make sure you actually use some kind of plastic on top of it, because it does stain the mat a little bit more than a usual product. So it's a good idea to use something that you can dispose of instead of using it on your mat and not being able to clean it as well. Although these sets are all different and have different colors, the final result came out that all 3 of the projects were actually very similar in color and go so well together. They actually match well together, which I'm really happy about. Because it has those browns and those green colors and some of it of that rusty yellow, they go so well together and they match perfectly with each other. For more inspiration, subscribe to my channel and visit me on my website. And I would love you to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Thanks so much. Bye!